The first thing they noticed was the silence. Not the quiet kind, the kind that follows violence. The prairie stretched for miles in every direction, a flat brown ocean under a white sky. Steam rose from the bodies that shouldn't have been there, thousands of them, motionless. Ribs split open, hides missing, bones already picked clean by wind and metal tools. The smell hit next, sweet, rotten, chemical. Wagons sat abandoned in the grass, wheels half sunk into the mud stacked high with skulls, some still bleeding, some already bleached, a railroad line cut straight through the horizon. Iron rails shimmering with heat, not a single passenger in sight, only crows, dozens, if not hundreds. They perched on carcasses like they belonged there. One man wrote that you could walk for 10 miles without seeing the living ground beneath your feet. Just fur, meat, and flies. And the bodies of an animal no one believed could disappear. Yet here they were, gone. The only question was how fast it happened, and who wanted it this way. This story takes place across the Great Plains of the American West, between the late 1860s and the 1880s. It involves U.S. commercial hunters, railroad companies, hide traders, government agents, settlers, and the Plains tribes whose lives depended on the buffalo for food, shelter, tools, culture, and survival. We're examining the systemic destruction of the American buffalo, an animal that once existed in numbers so large no one believed extinction was possible. What happened wasn't accidental, it wasn't natural, and it wasn't gradual. This was a deliberate industrial-scale eradication. Millions of animals wiped out in less than 2 decades, an ecosystem collapsed, entire nations displaced, and a continent changed forever. This episode is the story of how the largest land animal in North America went from dominant to nearly gone, and why that event still casts a shadow most people never notice today. Before the slaughter, the Great Plains were a world defined by motion. The land wasn't empty, it was alive. Herds of buffalo stretched beyond the curve of the earth, black waves rolling over grass so tall it brushed a horse's chest. Travelers described them as storms with weight, tens of thousands moving as one body, shifting direction like a tide. The ground shook when they ran, dust rose in clouds that could blot out the sun. Winter bit hard here, summer burned hotter than the forests back east, but the animals thrived anyway. This was a continent without fences, no rails, no borders, no ownership lines. Rivers cut through endless prairie. Buffalo wallowed in deep mud pits until the earth hardened into smooth, sun-bleached bowls. The tribes who lived here, Lakota, Cheyenne, Comanche, Arapaho, Kiowa, built entire civilizations around the buffalo. Their food, their tools, their homes, their clothing, their rituals. Every part of the animal had a purpose. The scale of the herd shaped everything. Travel routes, conflict patterns, migration cycles, even the timing of winter camps. Railroads had not yet carved the prairie into pieces. Settlers had not yet arrived in numbers. Markets had not yet discovered value in hides and bones. In this world, the buffalo were endless, immovable, permanent, too large to fall. Or so they thought. It began quietly. A single railroad line reached into the plains, bringing rifles, ammunition, and men who viewed the buffalo not as life, but as opportunity. At first, the killings looked like sport, a handful of hunters firing from horseback, or from the safety of a rail car as trains rolled past herds too slow to escape. Then the first hides were shipped east, and that changed everything. Because once the markets discovered they could turn buffalo skin into industrial belts for factories, profits became the engine. Within a year, dozens of hunting crews formed, then hundreds. The killing methods changed too. No more single shots for trophies, no more admiration from a distance. Now they used heavy caliber rifles designed to drop the animal instantly. Hunters fired from ridgeline, aiming not at one buffalo, but at the center of the herd, so the bodies collapsed inward and trapped the rest. Each kill triggered panic, panic triggered stampede, stampede created exhaustion, exhaustion created opportunity. They shot until the rifles overheated. The first wave of consequences was immediate. Hides piled in stacks taller than a man, towns emerged seemingly overnight, places with names like Leadville, Armadillo, Dodge, and Abilene. Tent cities, gambling rooms, saloons where hunters paid in blood money. Freight lines strained to carry the volume. Then came the second escalation, specialization. Hunters killed, skinners skinned, haulers hauled. Track crews extended the rails farther west. Each group was incentivized to move faster than the others. The slaughter industrialized. One eyewitness wrote that the plains looked as though a battle had passed, except the dead were all on one side. When the southern herd started thinning, attention shifted north, and here the scale grew even larger. Because the northern herds were denser and less wary. Some days, a single hunting party killed 1,000 animals before sunset. Rail yards often overflowed. Mountains of skulls appeared next to the tracks. The system strained, meat rotted in the sun, transport slowed, supplies ran thin. Attempts to preserve the meat failed. Attempts to dry it failed. Attempts to keep it edible under heat failed. So they stopped trying. The hides were money, everything else was waste. And then, an unexpected turn. Government agents, railway investors, and military officers began openly encouraging the slaughter. Not officially, not in writing, but with silence, support, and shipments of ammunition. A quote circulated, half rumor, half threat. Kill every buffalo you can. Every buffalo dead is one Indian gone. No one stepped in to stop the destruction, because from the perspective of power, this wasn't a crisis. It was a solution, and as demand increased, the breakdown began. There wasn't a single shot that ended it. It was a season. The winter of 1883. That year, the northern herds, once measured in tens of millions, failed to appear in the places they always had. Hunting parties rode out and found only bones. Rail depots sat empty. Skinners waited beside silent fields. For the first time in memory, the plains were bare. By spring, the truth was unavoidable. The buffalo were gone. Not reduced, not scattered, not hiding in distant valleys. Gone. The momentum that once felt unstoppable had nowhere left to go. The herds collapsed faster than the market, faster than the hunters, faster than the people who depended on them. There was no recovery coming, no hidden reserve, no last refuge. The point of no return had quietly passed, months before anyone realized it. In the years that followed, the aftermath became impossible to ignore. Towns that had exploded with wealth and population during the slaughter emptied just as quickly. Saloons closed, hotels shuttered, rail depots that once processed thousands of hides a day stood quiet, their platforms covered in dust and weeds. Factories in the east scrambled for substitutes. The industrial belts they'd built their machines on began snapping under strain. The supply vanished faster than engineers could adapt. Tribal nations across the plains faced starvation almost instantly. With the herds gone, winter camps couldn't be sustained. Nomadic routes collapsed, entire communities were forced into dependency. Some vanished completely. Conflict flared, treaties broke, reservations tightened, control shifted, and in a matter of months, an ecosystem that had functioned for thousands of years simply disintegrated. Not gradually, not organically, but in freefall. Wild predators starved, grasslands changed structure, water sources shifted, air quality declined during hot seasons due to rotten bone dust. The largest animal migration system on the continent was gone, and with it, the power balance. The Great Plains became something it had never been. Empty, not open, empty. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the absence of life. The Great Plains became something it never had been. Empty. Not open. Empty. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the absence of life. Today, the Great Plains look nothing like the world they once were. The herds that took days to pass a single point on the horizon are reduced to a fraction of their formal number. A few protected reserves, tourist parks, managed grazing lands, artificial survival. The migration routes are gone. The wallow fields have faded. The predators that depended on the buffalo have never returned. In some places, the only physical trace left are piles of bones buried beneath prairie soil, churned up occasionally by storms or shifting ground, white fragments of a vanished empire. The silence remains. Not the silence of wilderness, the silence left behind when something enormous is removed. People drive across the plains today and think it's always been empty. They don't realize they're looking at the ghost of the largest herd the world has ever seen. A wound so vast, most never recognize they're standing in it. They say the buffalo once ruled this land, but today, you can cross 1,000 miles of prairie and never see a single one. Some extinctions happen quietly, some happen in broad daylight, and somehow, those are the ones we forget the fastest.